let's talk about some new eyeshadows from Dieverune Cosmetics. They recently launched their April Showers collection, which was 5 single eyeshadows, 2 highlighters, and then they just launched the Dewdrops Part 2 palette with 2 highlighters, and I'm going to be showing you swatches of all of these shades. I'm also going to be showing some comparisons between the palettes as well as shades from other brands, and I was sent all of these products in PR, and I am friends with Monica, the owner of Dieverune Cosmetics, and I have a non-affiliated code which I'll put up on the screen. I'm so happy to see a Part 2 as I loved the first palette. I thought it was a great curated 6-pan palette with all beautiful, shiny, shifty, sparkly eyeshadows, and I do believe that palette is available. So this palette, just like the original Dewdrops, retails for $62, which basically this breaks down to about $10 per shade. So it might seem a lot, but if these were singles and you were buying them all together as a bundle, it would end up being around $60. There's also 2 highlighters that launched alongside the palette, Rainbow and Moonbow, and of course you can use these as eyeshadow, and I do show you what these look like on the cheek. And the highlighters are each $24, and everything is magnetic. And the collection that launched in the spring, I did not do a dedicated video on, so I thought I would kind of group these 2 together, which had 5 single eyeshadows. And I do have a reel up with one of the shades. I believe it's the super metallic, slightly more neutral kind of tie-dye shade. I do a heavy video up with this one if you want to see what this one looks like on the lid. And there's also 2 highlighters that launched, one of which drop is actually from the original Dewdrops palette. So this is the eyeshadow as a highlighter, full size, big pan, again $24 per highlighter. And then the April Shower shade, which is a little bit more kind of like a green highlighter, but it has different colorful sparkles throughout it. Also great as an eyeshadow. So let's get into the detail swatches of everything, some comparisons, and then these 2 looks, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts at the end of the video. First, I'm going to swatch the 2 iridescents from the palette. This is Droplet, this is Raindrop, and then this is the highlighter Rainbow, and this is the highlighter Moonbow. I definitely see a little bit of a difference between textures. Specifically, Raindrop is a little bit more piecey, kind of picks up that way as well. I'm going to just watch these together because in the pan, Droplet and Rainbow look very similar. So I wanted to see already what the difference might be. I'm going to add another layer here and another layer of Rainbow. So in terms of the difference between these 2 shades, this one's definitely a lot more purpley, and they do have a little bit of similarity though because they have bright red sparkles throughout. That being said, this one has it a lot more noticeable than this shade, but they do also have blue flecks throughout it as well. They have things in common, but they are in fact different, but it's definitely a little bit subtle, but you can really see the green and orange flecks throughout this one. And then this shade is just a really beautiful icy topper, and this one is almost silvery with a little bit of a taupe shift on an angle, or a little bit maybe of a base. It does remind me of Skin of a Killer from Bella Beaute Bar. And then Moonbow is predominantly orange with green sparkles throughout it. In terms of texture, Droplet does feel a bit more emollient, and Raindrop actually feels like it's a little bit looser pressed. While these 2 are also very smooth, but they have almost a little bit of thickness to them compared to specifically Droplet. Next up from the palette is Mist and Dew. They do have slight varying textures. Mist has just a slightly larger particle size, while Dew is super smooth and very metallic. They do have a little bit of slickness to them, but I think Mist is a little bit more squishy in the pan, while Dew, it just feels a little slicker because of the pigment is so silky smooth. I love this shade. It is so beautiful, so punchy. It's like bright aqua, teal, green, straight on with an orangey base, and it shifts to blue to purple, and it is just the shiftiest. This one will be such a fun shade all over the lid. Mist is an icy light blue with orange and teal sparkles throughout it, and it is a little bit more sheer but could be built up. And there's the sparkles inside. Next up is a split pan called Bubble, and so it has 2 shades in there, so I'm going to be swatching them first separately like this, and then I'm going to also swirl my finger around and swatch them kind of intermixed. I definitely think that the blue is kind of taking over a little bit over the pink. So this shade is very purple straight on with a pink shift. It almost looks like it has a little bit of a base, and then this one is a super bright blue with a little bit of a almost like a yellowish brown base to it, and it shifts to indigo. And this shade is slightly flaky, but it does pick up pretty smooth, and it does completely smooth out. And the last shade is Teardrop. It is a super vibrant. It looks a little bit more orange in the pan, but it looks actually very peachy pinky, and it looks like it has a little bit of like a grayish taupey base to it. It is extremely punchy, and it shifts to yellow all the way to lime green on a harsh angle, and it does have a little bit of squish in the pan. Two highlighters from the April Showers collection. Here's April Showers, and here is Drop, which is from the original Dewdrops palette. Definitely can be sheared out, and it has a yellow base with a bright blue purple reflect to it. April Showers has green and pink flecks throughout it, and has almost like a very pale beige tone to it overall. April Showers singles, this is Downpour, very smooth, and Sprinkle also feels very smooth, but maybe just a little less silky smooth, but it does feel dry. Neither of these feel squishy. Downpour is a bright blue with a little bit of a hint of like an yellowy orangey base, and it shifts to bright vibrant purple. Sprinkle is a minty green that shifts to blue to purple. And the other three shades are Lightning, Cloudburst, and Thunderbolts, and you can definitely see a little bit of a textural difference. These two are flaky, and this one is very smooth with more like sparkles throughout it, so it's more like a satin in its base. And this shade definitely has a little bit of slickness to it, a little bit of squish. Swatch is a little bit thicker, and so does this shade. These two feel very similar in texture to each other. They almost have the tiniest bit of a grittiness to them. And I think you can kind of see the texture here, especially on an angle. You can see the particle size a little bit better. And then this shade is very opaque, has more of a base with these sparkles on top. Lightning is a silver that leans green. Cloudburst is a lavender with pink and blue sparkles throughout it. And it shifts to kind of like a aqua, and it shifts a little bit to teal to maybe just slightly more green at a really harsh angle. And Thunderbolt is a dark denim blue black with green, pink, and silver flecks throughout it. For comparisons, here is Raindrop from the Dewdrops 2 palette, Splish from the original Dewdrops, Skin of a Killer from the Vamp palette, Skin of a Killer the highlighter. I do feel like these two are almost identical in tone. They have a little bit of a taupiness to them, but they're very silvery, almost leaning gray. And if you look really closely, the particle size is extremely similar between the two. Formulation-wise though, I feel like this one's a little bit looser pressed in the pan, but I think they're very similar, with maybe the Vamp palette version of Skin of a Killer has just a little bit more of a hint of a base, but very similar sparkle level as well. But I feel like you can see that these three specifically have a very similar, almost like a super cool toned, really light taupe base. Next up for comparisons is Dew from the Dewdrops 2 palette, Counting the Stars from Terra Moons, and this is Snowflake from the Snow Angel palette from Simply Posh, and this is Electric from the Simply Posh Aurora Lights palette. I thought that this one would be a little bit more similar, and even the Terra Moon shade. Like, they have a very similar concept to them, but Dew is just more opaque, more shiny, and just super like liquidy metallic, and it shifts to an indigo, and it's much more bright and noticeable. Next up is Teardrop from the Dewdrops 2 palette, and then this one is from the Moth and the Moon palette. I forget what the name was because I took it out of the palette, but they did sell this one as a single. So I think they're very similar. I think this shade has a little bit of like a grayish base, as I mentioned, and even though this one maybe seems like it does as well, I think this one is a bit more opaque, even though I built this one up, and it is a little bit darker, and it's just a little bit more of a true orange, versus this one leans a little bit more really bright peach coral with pink. But they are very similar. But in the shift, they're also very similar. Droplet from Dewdrops, 2 Persuasive from the Smitten palette, Comet Dust from Terra Moons, Rainbow Highlighter, and this is the iridescent shade from the Pat McGrath Petal Morphosis palette. It's actually so similar to Persuasive. It's very, very similar. I actually think Persuasive maybe is a little bit more opaque, can be built up to be more opaque. That being said, they're definitely different textures. The Pat McGrath shade does have a different particle size, and it just looks a little bit differently. But I mean, color-wise, they're very similar. They have pink and purple flecks throughout them. And Comet Dust is also very similar to Persuasive. And Rainbow's main distinction is it has red in it, which is pretty dominant, while in these 3 shades, the dominant color is definitely pink and purple. For the first look, I'm going to be using mattes from the Warlock of the Wood palette. And I'm going to be using Decay in the crease and Blackthorn on the outer corner to deepen up. So first taking Decay into the crease and kind of focusing it a little bit more towards the outer corner, and then just blending it inwards with whatever is left on the brush. And then taking Blackthorn on a really small blending brush, this one's from Refer, and just putting that onto the outer corner and kind of tapping it down first and then working to slowly blend it out. I'm also connecting that to my lower lash line and just kind of working slowly and then going back in a little bit with Decay to blend that all in. And then for the shimmer, I'm taking Dew, and I'm going to be misting my brush with the Color Cosmetics Fix Spray, just one little spritz, and just putting that all over the lid, making sure it's blended up into the matte as well as the outer corner matte. And here's the first finished look. I love how this came out. It's actually really interesting because I feel like the shade looks very, very green once it's on, and you don't necessarily see too much of the purple in it, because in the pan I feel like it looks very purpley and then has the green in there. For the second look, I'm going to be using the Gloomy Gardens palette, and I'm first taking this orange shade and popping it into my crease and slowly building it up and blending it up and out. And I'm taking the pastel orange below that and using that to blend out the orange further. And then I'm dipping into the burgundy shade to deepen out this outer corner, and I'm just blending that up and out into my crease and just a little bit onto my lid. But I'm definitely taking my time a little bit and kind of layering on as I feel I need to. And then I'm going back in with the orange to blend that out further, and I'm going to be using the Farinay Pixie Epoxy, and I'm first just going to put that all over the lid, and I'm going to tap on that with my finger, making sure I take any excess off as well as making sure that it is nice and tacky. And I'm picking up the shade Teardrop, and I'm using one of the new brushes from Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and I'm just picking that up a little bit, and I'm putting that starting off in the center and just kind of swiping it back and forth to the side out into the outer corner there, and then using the same brush picking up Droplet, and I just want this to be a little bit more of a twinkle accent on the inner corner, really picking up just a little bit and just kind of tapping it on. And here's the second finished look. I love how this one came out as well. Here's Moonbow. Here it is in a lower lighting. Here is Rainbow. I'm going to put on a little bit more. And in a lower lighting. So first I'm going to talk about the highlighters. I'm mostly going to be using as eyeshadows. I find myself reaching for some of these kinds of shades that have just a lot of dimensional sparkles throughout it, like Moonbow, Rainbow, and also April Showers. Like, I really like these with a just neutral wing or a blue wing, green wing, etc. And then just tapping these on the lid. But these are not the kinds of shades that I will wear from day to day or into work, just personal preference. I would love to see an option to buy these in a 26mm pan, which would bring the price down, and that way you could get less product if you were intending to only use these as eyeshadow. I am very excited to see Drop as a full size highlighter. I love this kind of shade. I do have a comparison to this shade in the original Dewdrops palette video. I think if this is the only shade that interested you in the Dewdrops palette, then definitely worth picking up. But again, I would love to see a smaller version. Like, I wish you could buy a 26mm version of it, unless you see yourself using this all the time as highlighter, eyeshadow, etc. In terms of texture, these are all pretty smooth. I would say the only shade that has a slightly larger particle size is actually Rainbow, but just ever so slightly. It's a little bit more PC compared to the silky smooth texture of the other highlighters. Moving on to the April Showers single eyeshadows, I like that there's a variety of textures. So there's two shades that are a little bit more sparkly, which is Lightning and Cloudburst, and they are also a little bit on the squishy side. I would highly recommend a tacky primer with these, and because they are a little bit flakier, they do pick up quite a bit, and they put down a lot as well. So you want to make sure you go in with a light hand, otherwise you're going to get like a thicker layer of these on your lid. Color wise, I think Thunderbolt is my least favorite, just because I don't really reach for these kinds of shades, but I do like, again, that there is an option of a different texture where this one is a little bit more satin. You have a satin base pigment with sparkles throughout it, so it's very easy to use, and I don't see any creasing issues with that one because it is very smooth and there's no slick or oiliness to that one. The other two shades, Sprinkle and Downpour, do have just a little bit more of a slickness to them. I especially love Downpour because it is very smooth, but it has a lot of dimensionality, and it's an iridescent, and you know, if you've been on my channel, I love iridescents. I cannot get enough iridescents to layer over mattes and to also just use as one and done shade. So I really like this one. It has just a little bit of slickness to it, but it kind of feels more like it's so smooth that it feels kind of slicker to the touch. And Sprinkle is the same texture as Downpour. And finally, the Dewdrops Part 2 palette. I love the variety of shades in here because I think you have some great, more colorful, some more opaque shades, and then some more topper-like shades and some iridescents, etc. And I think it's a really nice balance. This is such a great kind of everyday palette to pair with whatever mattes you want to wear that day. And especially the shade Droplet, I love using this one just tapped on the lid, just in a very light, effortless way with a little bit of an eyeshadow wing. It is just my go-to kind of look, and these kinds of shades are perfect for it. The shade Raindrop is a little similar to the shade Splish from the original Dewdrops palette, so something to keep in mind if you don't want anything repeating. They're not the same, but they're very similar. But of course, if you cannot get enough of Splish, then you're going to love the shade Raindrop. Besides Droplet, I have to say Dew is my favorite shade in here. It is one of my most favorite shades, I would say, because the moment I saw this, the moment I swatched it, the moment I applied it, it is so shifty, so smooth, very metallic, very easy to apply. So far, I'm not getting any creasing. It is so beautiful. I would recommend especially some of these slightly piecier, slightly chunkier shades over a tacky primer for sure if you have hooded, oily lids. I haven't used all the shades on the lid, but I have used Droplet and Raindrop on the lid, and right now I'm wearing Dew and Teardrop, and so far I'm not experiencing any creasing. So while they do feel like they're a little bit slicker to the touch, they're not creasing on me within 30 minutes or an hour. And when I wore Droplet for 12 hours, I didn't have any creasing either, but I used a very little bit. Again, I just use it as like a scattered, ethereal kind of effect on the lid. I really like the shade Bubble. I actually think I like it better than the shade Splash, because with this one, you're definitely getting two in one kind of eyeshadow, versus in Splash, it's so tie-dye that it would be really hard to pick up just one shade. But with a split panel like this, you can definitely easily pick up both sides, or you can mix them together. And I do really like that it's in here. I think it adds just a little bit of extra fun in here, and again, you get an extra shade essentially, so you really have 7 shades in this little eyeshadow palette. But let me know in the comments below if you picked any of these products up, because they are all launched already, or if you plan on it, are you putting these on your wish list? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy this kind of content and you love swatches of shiny, shifty, sparkly eyeshadows as well as tutorials, then definitely check out some of my other videos, which I will put up on the screen. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.